All right, welcome, delegates. We are here tonight to learn about how to schedule legislative visits, and Andy will be discussing that and then presenting on planning and executing your legislative visit at Day at the Capitol on Monday, May 8th. We have Janelle, and she's also our Day at the Capitol chair coordinator. So let me share my screen. Get this going, and I'll turn it over to Andy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here this evening. Looking very much forward to our day at the Capitol and our spring conference this year. For those watching on the recording, hoping this will be helpful for you in the future as you schedule legislative visits to support whatever legislation we might be supporting, or we have a lot of different ways that this training could be applied. So let's talk about some of those ways, some of those different whys. And this is really the starting point for this whole process. For us this year, we will be going to the Capitol with legislation kind of already in our pocket of what we want the assembly members, the senators, to be, what we're going to be asking them for. But that might not always be the case. In some visits, you might just be visiting to talk to them about CalSpec, about your league specifically, or giving them information about a specific issue or a cause that you are passionate about or want to see some changes made on. And identifying that before you even start this whole process is really critical, because the time that you're asking for is going to be very, you want it to be very concise. So once you determine why you are reaching out to them, the next step is asking for that. And one of the things that we really want to encourage is that don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to have a conversation as you are connecting with the folks at the Capitol. Remember that this is a conversation. There you have shared goals. They're there to help support what you want just as much as you're there to help support what they want. It's a negotiation, we'll say. It's a conversation. And building that relationship will be critical to the success of you moving your issues forward and you helping support what they might be working on. So once you know why you're there, don't be afraid to ask and tell them what you're there for. So here's some language around this. I'd like to keep you updated on our organization's work on this session. I'd like for the senator to vote in support of this bill. Don't be afraid to be concise about what you're looking for. And don't be afraid to say, you know what, I'm just going to keep this conversation going. Maybe if there wasn't enough time initially, you can keep scheduling conversations and keep that relationship going. So understand why and asking. Next slide. Once you have done that, you will, once you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, you'll contact your legislator's scheduler. So I'm going to actually share a screen. We're going to do some technical things, but not yet. I'm going to share my screen to show you how to get to your legislator's site so that you can navigate and schedule a meeting. So there's two ways to schedule a meeting. You can call Sacramento and ask for the scheduler's email address, or you can use the contact form on the legislator's website. I have done the latter and I've done the former. Both have been effective. I'm gonna show you what this looks like. And I didn't have the opportunity to do this at our last conference. So you'll click on that findyourrep.legislator.california.gov. Now you'll know where I live. And I'm gonna connect us with our assembly member, my assembly member, Isaac Bryan. We've been really lucky to have him come to our junior league office and he participated in some of our Public Policy Institute sessions this year. So this is his website. Click on there and you can connect with him in a number of different ways. I follow him on Instagram. He has a great Instagram account, shows where he's at, what he's supporting. Some legislators are obviously more active than others, but it kind of gives you an opportunity to get to know the folks who are representing you and what they care about and why they care about it. So you can go here, click on the email me, it will bring you to that contact form. Nice and simple. You can go into here, put your information, say and then you can put your ask in the comments. You can also sign up to receive newsletters, watch some videos. Every legislator is going to look a little bit different. And that is how you do that. It's going to look different for each legislator if you go on their website, but each one of them will have a form that you can fill out. Okay, I think I'll just continue, I guess, from here. So if you're sending just a straight email to them from your email, this is an example of how to do that. So I'm going to actually go to the next slide because I really like the way this is kind of broken down. This is a model. It's like a template, right? So you're going to say, hey, scheduler staffer, you're going to ask for them directly. Say that I'm a constituent from where you're from, when you're going to be visiting, and then talk about your role and why you're going to be in town. That's another opportunity for them to kind of get to know what you might be representing. Junior League CalSPAC does have a reputation. And so we want to kind of we have the opportunity to lead with that, and that will act to our benefit. Then we ask, would there be an opportunity for me to meet at the Capitol or the swing space on the afternoon? You can put the time in there. And again, this is a negotiation, remembering we can be flexible as they come back to us. Maybe we really want to meet with them at 3 o'clock and somebody says, I have a 2:30 available. There are a number of staffers available. If this specific person isn't available, they may have somebody else at 3 o'clock that can take and meet with you. Obviously, if you have the opportunity to meet with a senator or assembly member, take that chance, or take that over meeting with a staffer if you can. But you have the opportunity to negotiate. If they say no, you will survive and you can just meet with them when you can. And then request a reply, say thank you, and then your contact information so they can reach back out to you. All right. So once you get that far, you've done all this work, you're going to go ahead and schedule the meeting. Don't forget to monitor your email. That is not something that I'm great at. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. It seems obvious, but you might want to put like a little reminder, check on the specific email. You can even set it up so that it's like an urgent or like a different thing in Google. Google really allows you to do that. Remember that meetings are scheduled 1 to 2 weeks in advance, but that staff's going to be trying to make themselves available for brief meetings as needed. We talked in the last conference about what lobbying means, right? Because we talk to people sometimes in the lobby on their way from one thing to another, and you might be just doing that in these situations. You're just trying to catch people when you can. Don't be afraid to suggest an alternative time again, and be available to take a meeting with any staffer who's available. Know that COVID, we're still kind of adjusting to this post-COVID world again. And everybody has different ways of navigating that, but we're kind of figuring it out. Be nice to them. We're all figuring it out. So I think that is going to get you to the point where you are meeting with the legislator, meeting with the staffer, you're having the conversation, And I'm going to kick it over to Janelle, and she will kind of take it from here. Do we want to pause for questions or comments, or do we want to pause at the end? We didn't ask that question when we prepped. What do you think? Janelle?
I think now's good.
Now?
If there's
Okay.
anything from the just previous slides.
Yeah. So as you're setting it up, any questions? Additional thoughts or comments from your experiences are welcome.
Sorry. Okay. It's between 1:30 and 4 on that Monday that we're looking at.
I will answer this. Yeah, so our program wraps at about 1. So that 30 minutes will give you time to make your way over to where the offices are. We are going to be handing Senator Cortese his Legislator of the Year award on the Capitol steps at 2. But I mean, that's not, if you can get a meeting around whatever time, 1:30 to 4 would be the
Okay.
time window. We wrap at 4. If you really want to stay till 5, God bless you.
Okay, thank you.
And is it my time to start? Are there any other questions?
I asked in the chat, but I can say it in person. Is the template email language available in a Word doc in Dropbox, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So yeah, somebody as we're signing off, remind me to Dropbox that or get that into the Dropbox, or if someone's able, Andy, if you're able to do that while we're futzing around or while I ramble here. Are we ready to go on to the actual meeting itself? I'm going to move. I didn't want to do this during Andy's presentation because that's just really distracting. But I feel like I've got the sun all the way up my eyeballs and probably in yours too. So I'm going to migrate and we're going to get talking about legislative meetings. Has anyone had a legislative meeting before with a staffer or anyone? Okay, cool. Well, let me get started then. So what we're going to talk about is you've got the meeting scheduled. If you could advance the slide just to the next one. You've got the meeting scheduled, you're on their calendar. You understand the ask, go to the legislator's website, maybe check out their bio. It's interesting that Andy brought up Isaac Bryan. He's one I kind of was looking up. Let's have you go back. Yeah, thank you. He was when I was looking up for Day at the Capitol thing, and I found out he was a foster youth. You know what I mean? In our home leagues area is transitional age foster youth. So I found that interesting. So I was like, sometimes they really do have something interesting in their background, or they have a committee assignment that could be helpful with some of the things we might be doing. The sun is stalking me. Let me find a better one. I'm so sorry. My home got busy, so I had to kind of evacuate. All right, there we go. But being able to understand, maybe do they have good committee assignments? Not totally important to what you're doing, but helpful if you have that extra time. So what's usually helpful for visits too is if you have any kind of leave behinds or fact sheets that you can leave with them. Sometimes it's just more from a branding standpoint too, than I have specifically this real helpful fact sheet that's going to educate you on an issue. We're trying to get something produced that is a CalSPAC specific one that's evergreen that you can always leave with them. So because they do keep these things, they keep them in a little file and they'll pull your folder. And so if you go to a meeting later, they're going to pull the CalSPAC folder out and they're going to have everything you've ever given them because they're really organized. So that's kind of cool. If there are any talking points associated with your visit, printing those out and having those with you, because as we've mentioned before, these aren't really tech intensive meetings. We'll get into that later. The printed word is very valuable and always helpful to have with you. If you're meeting with other people, if you're going with like a group of 3 or 4 people or even 2, coordinating and pacing your speaking roles, like, hey, Katie, how about I'll do kind of the introductory stuff once we get to talking about our focus area. If you want to do like 2 minutes of talking about our focus area, answer any questions, and then I'll close it up with the ask. What do you think? Cool. So that kind of allows you to know, who's going to be handling what. You can do that handoff back and forth. If it's just you, do that with yourself and it'll be great. Then what you'll want to do also is emailing the staffer the day before the meeting just to do the final confirmation. Don't sweat it if they don't confirm, but sometimes it's just helpful. One thing that Andy had on a previous slide was signing off on that email with your cell phone. This is important because sometimes the staffers will call you or text you to move the meeting time. And sometimes they know you're not going to be monitoring your emails closely, but they will ping your cell. So if you're open, they will never abuse it. And there are worse things in this world than having congressional staffers having your cell phone numbers, especially if they know how to conduct themselves appropriately. Just saying. So if you could advance to the next slide. What we'll get to now is where's the meeting? You may have heard Summer talk about the swing space, Andy talk about the swing space. So meetings aren't really held. The legislators' offices are not in the Capitol building right now because of this huge construction project, and it's going to be a good few years. They're now in the swing space, which is literally a block from the Capitol. And it's this huge, you can see it, it's this office complex. They built it specifically for this purpose, which is really neat because it's got hearing rooms. It's got a billion of the legislators' offices, the governor's offices in there. There's a cafeteria, but they've also got these really neat meeting spaces that you can see in this bottom photo on every single floor. They've got all of these little enclaves for collaborations, for quick meetings. So don't assume that your meeting is going to be in the Capitol. It's going to be in the swing space. The only reason I put the Capitol is because if you are able to get the legislator or staffer right after like a floor vote or something like that, it might be in the Capitol, but more often than not, it will be at this office building. Next slide, please. And the swing space is actually really cool. I wish they would keep it there because I love the collaborative spaces because there's none of those at the Capitol. And it is like lobbyist hallway misery at the Capitol. So I dig the seating. I dig the little, they've done a really good job. So one thing we're going to try to impress upon you is practicing legislative meeting etiquette. I feel like a snob. This is not stuff Samaya's probably going to ever dive in and get into with us because it's internal. It's what we should be talking about with each other. It's really more formal than typical etiquette that you would expect, like at a meeting or something. You need to keep your eyes to the person, no wandering eyes, no excessive fidgeting in the chair. Don't look at the clock over there. Don't get fixated on whatever the artwork might be behind here. Don't tap, your finger on the table, just weird things like this, things that I got in trouble from my mentors or my staff would get in trouble for. So just really trying not to head nod when people are talking like, oh yeah, not really rushing people through what they're saying and giving them time, to complete those thoughts. Sounds really weird, but I will tell you that staffer is going to follow the same exact protocol that this is. So it's just neater if you go in and just, even if you make even a low mistake, that's fine, but just kind of expect to be on your best, very still, quiet, calm behavior. Don't use a laptop, tablet, or phone to do any speaking points off of or taking notes, making sure that you're reading off of printed things, either on your lap or on the table in front of you. Typically, especially on the day at the Capitol, we're going to be sending you with materials. So you'll have the ones that you hand to the legislative staffer in one colored folder, and you'll have your colored folder so that you don't mix them up because you don't want them knowing your ridiculous talking points. If you need to take notes, like I mentioned at the last conference, bring a little notepad, bring a pen. So the staffers are never going to use technology in front of you. They don't even do it in meetings. I was in a hearing yesterday sitting next to Senator Nilo's chief of staff, and he's literally notebooking. So this is really just how it works on the Hill. Next slide. And it does feel like 1905, but it's just really old timey, and it's kind of cool because you feel like people are that much more connected when they're talking to you because they're not, that note they might be taking on their laptop, they're not emailing, they're actually looking at you the whole meeting. I would plan for a 15-minute meeting max. Sometimes they'll let you know as you get started. I only have 5 minutes. That helps you with your pacing and your ask. Sometimes they can be shorter, maybe they'll run a little longer, but just be flexible, but understand that 15 is kind of par for the course. Plan to be on time. I was trained to call staffers even if you're going to be a couple minutes late. Just because they're sitting there going, where's my meeting? Because they know we're just normal constituents. We're not watching the clock as much as they are. So they kind of sweat a little bit if they don't see you and they're like, okay, maybe they forgot. You assure them that you didn't forget when you call. So they're not going to go take another meeting or get distracted somewhere else. When you go to the door, it's going to have like the plaque with the legislator's name and like state insignia and everything. Walk right into the door. There's no knocking, there's no bell. It's got like a little lobby area and a reception desk. Some of them are fancier than others. but there's usually a desk where a staffer is. They're not called a receptionist. It could be any staffer sometimes. So you don't know who's sitting there. Always be nice to them. Let them know what time you're there for the meeting, who you're going to meet with. There's chairs that you'll sit there and wait for the staffer to come out. And again, like we talked about, and Andy brought up again, you might be meeting in that little lobby. You might be meeting in a separate little office, sub office in their office. You might be meeting in the legislator's fancy pants office with all their cool things hanging up, you know, on their neat couch. You might be meeting in the hallway. You might be meeting in the other cool hallway with seating. Just be flexible, and just go pretty much wherever they want to drag you. Sometimes they'll take you in a cool elevator that you wouldn't normally have access to and walk you down a hallway you have no business being in. So it's adventure time, you know, go with the staffers wherever they want to take you. Next slide. And you think that this won't happen at meetings like this, but every now and then they're like, I need to walk to the next hearing, or I need to go to take this thing, and they'll take you in the cool underground train and stuff. So anyhow, it can be fun. During the meeting, I think it's helpful to keep in mind staffers can be any age, but more often they're not. They're in their like 20s and 30s, guys, gals, anything. And they're just normal humans, you know? So half the time you're getting them, they've had a stressful day. They maybe haven't had lunch yet. They're feeling a lot of pressure all the time. So sometimes when you meet with them, you know, and as you're kind of getting settled into your seats or whatever, or just even if you're already seated, saying, how's your day been? You know, and they'll be like, oh, and they're more than happy, you know, to vent for a minute or two, or they'll kind of be like, yeah, it's been a tough week. You can say, hey, are you from the home district? You know, and sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, but that kind of gives you just a little bit of time to background with them. And they like that because it just shows I'm not here to be awkward and, you know, dive right into business. You know, I kind of like you, would like to talk to you, because they're really typically friendly people. Thank them for taking the meeting, and then just get started. Introduce yourself and your organization, almost like that email text sounded. You know, my name's, you know, Janelle Greenlee. I'm with CalSPAC, or an organization that does this. Explain the why, you know, I really want to tell you a little bit more about CalSPAC and Junior League. That's why I'm here today. Or, hey, I have a bill that I kind of want to run by you and see how you think the senator might vote on. You can go to the next slide. So the difference between the why and the ask is the why is, I got to meet with them I need to meet with them because we have a hearing coming up. That's the why. The ask is, what's the actual thing I'm going to ask them to do? You know, because sometimes they're similar, sometimes there's a little tweak on them. So the ask might be, the why is, yeah, I'm meeting with you today, you know, because, you know, our focus area is food insecurity. And I know that the senator's shown some interest in this, and I see they've authored a couple bills on this before. And then your ask would be, you know, like, why am I here? That's great. Why are you here? My ask is, our league, you know, touches this issue or is considering working on this issue. And I just really like to track with you to see if, you know, let you know what we're doing back home, you know, in our home league, or, you know, seeing if there's any ways that we could be engaged, maybe in, you know, future legislation. That's the ask versus the why. So just making sure that you understand both of them will really kind of, you know, present you with a little bit of savvy, and they'll start kind of trusting that you understand the distinction between the two. When you talk to the staffers, don't be afraid to ask questions. Say, do you have any questions? You know, or is there anything that you would want, you know, me to expand upon? And they'll let you know. Sometimes they won't have any questions, and that's fine. What you can do is say, hey, you know, maybe I'll follow up with you an email. If they ask, you know, do you have any more background on this thing, or can you get me some more information about your home league or this one organization? You can say, sure, you know, I can do that with you an email. One thing that I found is helpful, and actually at some meetings would have a staffer specifically there, is to write down any questions that they ask, especially when you start getting into deeper policy dives. Summer's been involved with this in our legislation, and it's very telling the more that you start tracking the questions that people ask, because that kind of helps you know that what you need to fluff up on, what you need to have resources available on, and just kind of helps you better gauge and prepare for future things. Next slide. I think I went from the bright sun to like the dark cave, so I'm sorry if my there's no good light here today, but we're getting it done. So as the meeting wraps up, one thing that's helpful, so you've gone through the small talk, you've talked about, you know, your why, your ask, you've given them the details. The next thing is helpful is discussing your next touch point. We have exhausted everything to talk about. What do? You say, okay, gotta go, bye. That's weird. So I think it's helpful to say, hey, let's keep up an email. Let's see, maybe there's a future meeting. Let me try to maybe touch base with you about this extra piece of information I need to give you. But just kind of establishing that, hey, yeah, I'll follow up with you an email here in the coming weeks, or I'll touch base with you when we come into town next or on your next district visit, just so that they know, yeah, I'm gonna bother you again. I'll be around. If you have a business card, this is something that we're working on for Day at the Capitol, is there will possibly be boilerplate evergreen CalSPAC business cards for you to be able to hand out, so that they have some CalSPAC branded information that will allow them to contact the generalized CalSPAC contacts, as well as you as an individual delegate. It's very helpful to give them a card. In some meetings, they throw their cards out like confetti and everybody's on the table, or, pinata, and everybody's grabbing a card. These people speak in business cards and it feels antiquated, but again, just pretend it's many, many years ago, and having a card is very helpful because they keep those. They bank them. It's really interesting. Thank them for their time and engagement. It's always tell them to have a great week, or, oh, good luck with that thing that you're working on later today. I hope your hearing goes well, or whatever. You can always ask to take a group photo, ask if you're able to post it to social media. Staffers don't mind taking group photos. They're like, sure, why not? Sometimes they'll be like, hey, let's take it in front of the weird quilt, that somebody donated to the senator or something, or this neat, insignia on the wall. If they didn't give you their card, the receptionist desk, or the entry desk, will usually have all of the main staffers' business cards. So if you walk back out, you go, hey, I didn't get Jim's card, does he have one? They'll hand you one, or it'll be right there. Just helpful for you to have, also to remember who you met with, especially if you're engaging in a lot of meetings. Sometimes there's a guest book if you're a constituent. Only sign it if you're a constituent, because that's just good form. Sign the guest book, say where you're from and all that. And then make sure you say thank you and goodbye to anybody on your way out. Anyone that you talked to or helped you get through the right door or whatever. Just good form. And next slide. And I know we're over the 30-minute mark, but this will go a little faster. Once you're outside of the door, especially if you've had any intensive meetings or tough things that you talked about, or they asked tough questions, good job, you did it. Take notes of any lessons learned, like, I didn't have this one piece of information, or, ooh, I didn't, explain that thing right. It's just helpful as you walk out of each individual meeting to make sure okay, especially sometimes you're turning around and going to another one in 5 minutes, so you can go, I think next time I want to do this thing better. So it's helpful to do that postmortem pretty quickly. Determine your follow-up actions, especially if you're with multiple people. Like, hey, I'll be sure to follow up via email. Can you look up that one thing they asked us to, or ask, Janet if she can hunt that piece of information down for us. And then within 1 to 2 days, you don't need to do it the same day. They're busy people, they understand. And if anything, it gives them kind of a little breathing room to, oh yeah, I remember that person, I like them. 1 to 2 days later, send them an email thanking them for their time. And again, confirming that next step, hey, I'm going to get you that information, or hey, I want to keep tracking with you on this issue. So they're like, oh yeah, I remember that person. I remember CalSPAC. Yes, let's totally keep talking to each other. Next slide. Oh, the fun part. Staffers are people too. This is one of my slides from one of my other orgs. I think it's helpful to remember a lot of them have a neat story sometimes of how they joined the office or what brought them into wanting to work in public policy. So just those candid conversations in those ways, because these people are the ones that are doing all the work for the legislators. And when you're working in the legislative sphere, you are working more intensively with the staffers than with anybody else. They make all the decisions, they handle all the amendments. So the more that you can build those relationships and start seeing them as colleagues, almost, these are your peers, and you all want the same thing. You want to, get in, make good policy, and hopefully transform lives. Next slide. Yeah, and meetings can be fun. Like I mentioned, weird quilts hanging up. You might end up like in the library. Sometimes that one actually in the middle is in California, but back in the Capitol. Usually staffers, especially if you're a constituent, will be really neat. They'll say, hey, do you want to see the thing, or have your photo taken touching the weird thing on the wall that we have, or, with the cool photo. So just be open to it. Don't overthink it too much. Especially if you're just going to put us on the radar and just say, hey, we're CalSPAC, we're Junior League, we exist, and we just love to keep a relationship with you. And that's, I believe, all I have to say. Next slide. I think it's going to be, yeah, thank you and good luck. So let me know if you have any questions. I clearly am so weird and enjoy doing this work. So I would happily tuck any of you into my bag anytime, or if you ever get bored and just want to go raid Sacramento and do meetings or anywhere, let me know.
Looks like Vanessa has a question.
Vanessa. Or she has a clap. I don't know.
Sorry,
She's
I was just
applauding.
punching.
There we
Thank
go.
you for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Cool. And with respect to Day at the Capitol, don't know that we have any super clear asks. I'm working on that right now, and you will have talking points given to you. You will have, like I mentioned, this little blue folder that every single person is going to have, not just like the senior delegate or whoever. Everyone's going to have a blue folder. They're going to have whatever talking points are associated with our supported legislation, so that hey, we're supporting these bills. We'd love it if you would too, Our sponsored legislation. Hey, we wrote this bill. We care about this, and we'd love for you to vote aye when it comes before you. Anytime and all the time. Committee, floor, you name it, I want you to vote aye. Or, hey, we're CalSPAC. This is our organization. These are the areas we like to dabble in. Let's keep the conversation going. So we'll let you kind of know those talking points and asks so that you'll have them right in front of you. And we'll have another little touch point on this at Day at the Capitol too, so that you kind of feel like you're launching into the meeting, hopefully a little more confident.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you. That was actually really, really informative. Thank you.
Good. Bye, Annie.
Oh, I also want to shout out to the legislation that got, because, sorry, ready? Let's restart this. I want to do a shout out because the legislation that we co-wrote, got pushed through today. And I'll kick it to Janelle to talk more about that. But I just wanted to highlight that the work is exciting. It's being done. Kudos. Nice work.
I think if you're watching this on a later video, this is like a time capsule moment. You're like, what are they talking about? What legislation? No, yeah. Our SB 848 that we were talking about at the conference, our sponsored legislation, it passed its first Senate hearing yesterday. The Senate, I've already forgotten, Senate Labor Committee passed unanimously 5-0. We thought it was going to be a split vote with one abstention, but he ended up voting to support. Next Tuesday, 9 a.m. or probably later than 9 a.m. the way things are going lately, we go to Senate Judiciary. And then once we pass that, because we go to the thing we always talk about with our supported bills, the appropriate suspense file. So we go to the suspense file if you remember seeing that on any of your bills. So good times ahead. Thank you everybody for your work and support on it. Summer, you've been just absolutely fantabulous to work with, and Lena and Katie have been great supports, you as well, Andy. So I appreciate everybody. It's been a good time.
Summer, do you want to say anything about that? Very exciting.
Oh, it was a kind of a relief and excitement to kind of get to digitally watch the hearing. And yeah, I'm excited for the next steps. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, if that's it for tonight, we will conclude this Zoom and save this. We will email the recording back out, and we will put the presentation on Dropbox under probably Day at the Capitol. Is that where it would go, Janelle? DATC?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.